Welcome to this first in a series of Photoshop tutorials. In this project, we'll learn how to navigate the Photoshop interface and we'll become familiar with a number of its basic tools. Let's get started. We'll begin by experimenting with the interface a bit. So notice how I can grab all of these different panels, I can break them off, I can move them, I can expand them and collapse them, and I can even snap them onto each other. I can snap one onto the right side of the other, I can take a couple and snap them onto the bottom of another one, I can take one and nest it inside of others. So play with moving these around, and you can even close them all together by clicking the little X's. Now, if you close something and you need to find it again, you can always go to Window, and then you can find what you're looking for here. So for example, if I'm looking for the History panel again, I can just click History and it will bring it back. Now, if you want to restore everything to how it was when you began, you can click Window, Workspace, and go to Reset Essentials. And it will return to how it was when we began. I don't want this stuff here, so I'm going to collapse that by clicking this little double right arrow to get that out of the way. Now let's begin. We're going to begin by creating a new document. I can click File, New, or I could press Control N. And I want to make sure that I'm measuring my document in pixels because that's what matters to me right now. So I'm going to change this drop down from inches to pixels. And 2100 by 1500 is fine for this project. So I'm going to click Create, and I've got a new document. Before we get started making some art, let's learn how to undo the mistakes that we're bound to make while we do this. So, for sake of example, switch to the brush tool. You can push B for brush, or you can click over here and just draw a little line around here. Okay, pretend that was a mistake we made and we want to undo it. All you have to do is press Control Z. That undoes something. If you push it again, it will redo it. So Control Z will undo and redo the last step. And you can find that up here, Edit Undo or Edit Redo. Okay, so let's say we did that, but then we did a bunch of other things, and maybe I chose a different color and I drew some other stuff in here. What happens now if I want to undo more than one of these things? If I press Control Z, it only undoes the last one that I did. I can't do undo more than that. This is where we need the History panel. If you go up here and click on this button, it will show the History panel. This shows everything that you've done recently. And notice as I add new things, there are new items appearing to the History panel. So if I switch to the eraser and erased some of this now, you'd see the eraser tool is appearing on there, right? Brush tool, eraser tool, etc. The History panel is very useful because I can click back in time and undo multiple things that I have done. And if I go up really far, I could go all the way back to the beginning of my document. Right? Now you do have a limited number of history states. If you make too many mistakes in a row, you won't be able to go all the way back. So definitely fix the mistakes as soon as you realize them. Don't wait any longer than that. If you can't find your history panel, like say for example if you accidentally closed it, you can always go Window, History, and reopen it again. And remember, you can dock anything you want to back in the side there. The other key that you're going to want to keep in mind as you work is the Escape key. For example, in this project, at some point we're going to be using the Polygonal Lasso tool, clicking around like this. If you want to get out of this and you want to start over, just press Escape and it will cancel whatever is happening right there. Let's begin now by erasing everything that we've done here so we can start with the blank canvas. To do that, first, I'm going to collapse my History panel, and then over here on this background layer, I want to unlock it so that I can erase all of the pixels. To do that, I click on this little lock icon. Now I'm going to select the entire canvas. I could click Select All, or I could just press Control A. Now I'm going to click Edit, Clear. And all of those pixels are gone, and this indicates transparency. Now I'm going to press Control D to deselect. I'm now going to make a new layer by clicking the New Layer button. And I'm going to begin by drawing a polygonal selection. And I'll do that by clicking and holding right here and choosing the Polygonal Lasso tool. I'm going to start outside the canvas bounds down here and I'm just going to start clicking. Each time I click, I'm setting an anchor point. So I'm moving and I'm clicking to create a sort of mountain range along the bottom. When I get to the edge, I'll click outside the bounds, now below the canvas again, and I can come back to my starting point and click once to finalize my selection. Now that I've got this selection, and I can see it selected by those little marching ants that are walking around, I'm going to fill this in. I can click Edit, Fill, or in the future I can press Shift F5, and I'm going to choose a color. I'm going to change it from white to color, and I'm going to choose a sort of dark brown color. So I'll need to move the color, the hue selector, to an orange, and then move the darkness and saturation down to about here. I'll click OK, and then I'll click OK again. And I've got my first row of mountains. I'm now going to press Control D to deselect, and I'm going to make a new layer. So I'll click the new layer button, and I'm going to draw another row of mountains. This one a little bit higher up than the previous, and it's okay if it overlaps a little bit. And once again, I'll go outside the canvas bounds, back to the starting point, and I'm going to fill this again. This time I'm going to push Shift F5 to quickly bring this menu up. I'll click Color, Color, and I'm going to choose a slightly lighter color this time. And then I'll click OK and OK. Now I'm going to press Control D to deselect. Right away, you'll see I have a problem that my second mountains are covering my first ones, and that's not how I want it to look. So over in the Layers panel, I just move Layer 2 down beneath Layer 1, and now you can see that they're ordered properly. I'm going to repeat this process one more time for a third row of mountains. So I'll click New, and I will go ahead and click across. Down below the canvas bounds, back to my starting point, and once again, Shift F5 to fill, color, color, and an even lighter color now. And then I'll click OK and OK. Control D to deselect, and I need to move my layer 3 under layer 2 to get them in the proper order. So now you can now see I have my 3 rows of mountains, each becoming slightly lighter in color as they recede into the distance. I'm now going to create a sun for my scene. So I'm going to create yet another new layer. I'm going to move it down actually so that it's just under the mountain layers, and this would be a good time to start naming my layers. So I'm actually going to double click on layer 4 and give it a name. I'm going to call it Sun, and I might as well name all the other mountain layers too. I'll call that Mountains 3, Mountains 2, Mountains 1. Now I'm going to go back to my sun layer, and I'm going to grab the Elliptical Marquee tool. So I need to click and hold on here. If you have the rectangular one showing, you'll need to switch to the Elliptical Marquee tool. And now I can click and start dragging, and you'll see it starts drawing an ellipse. Now if I want this to be a perfect circle, all I have to do is hold down the Shift key, and it will snap to a perfect circle. I'm going to go until I have a size that I like for my sun. I think about there looks good. And now I'm going to fill it. I'm going to push Shift F5. I'm going to change the color to just plain white actually, because the sun is very bright. And I'll leave these items alone and click OK. Now I'm going to press Control D to deselect, and I'm going to switch to the Move tool. I could also press V to get the Move tool. And you can now see if I move it, it will go down behind my mountains because that's how my layer order is set. I'm going to put the sun right about here. Now I need to add a sky, which I'm going to use a gradient for. So I'm going to go to layer 0, which has nothing on it, and I'm going to double click it and call it Sky. Now I'm going to use the gradient tool. I can push G for gradient, or I can click on this tool right here. And up above, I can see that right now it would create a fade from black to white. That's because my foreground color here is set to black and my background color is set to white. I want to change that. I'm going to click on the foreground color, and I'm going to change it to a bright yellow color. Click OK. Change the background color to a bright orange color, reddish orange. click OK, and now you'll see the gradient fades from yellow to orange. Now I want to select the type of gradient, which in this case I want to use a radial gradient since I want the light to look like it's emanating out from the sun. So I'll click on the second one over, radial gradient. All I have to do is click in the center of the sun and hold and drag out to the periphery of my document and release. And I've got a nice gradient sky. Next I'm going to add some clouds. To do that, I'm going to click the New Layer button first, and I'm going to switch to the Brush tool. I can push B for brush, or I can find the Brush tool right here. With the Brush tool selected, I can click up here and get some tool options. Size and hardness are your main options for right now. Hardness, I'm going to set it about 50%, so the edge of the brush is a little fuzzy but not too soft. And size, 200 might be okay. I can actually use the left and right bracket keys on my keyboard to change the size easily and quickly and see about how large it will be. The last thing I need to do before I start painting is to switch the colors, my color back to white. I can do that quickly by clicking this little icon here, which sets me back to black and white. And now I can swap my foreground and background color by clicking this icon. I can also always press X to do that. Now I want to make some perfectly horizontal clouds for this drawing. So I'm going to click and hold down Shift and drag to the right, and you'll see I'm making a perfectly horizontal line. Then I'm going to release the mouse and the keyboard and do that again. Click, Shift, drag to the right. There we go. Click, Shift, drag right. Click, Shift, drag right. Click, Shift, drag right. And I'll make one more small cloud over here. I think that looks pretty good. Now I'd like to name this layer Clouds, and I'd like to turn the opacity of the layer down to make my clouds a little bit transparent. So with the Clouds layer selected, I can click Opacity and turn this slider down to make the clouds a bit see-through. I like 60%. I think that looks pretty good. Next I'm going to make some birds for the sky. I'm going to click New Layer. I'm going to call it Birds. I'm going to make sure I'm still on the Brush tool. This time I'm going to turn the hardness all the way up, and I'm going to switch my color to black. I can do that by clicking here or by just simply swapping them. I'll click here. I'm going to turn my brush size up just a little, and I'm just going to go click, click. And now I'm going to switch to the Eraser tool. I can press E for Eraser. And it should be about the same size, hardness all the way up. And now I'm just going to erase, click, click, to make a bird in the sky. I could make another one over here if I want to. So Brush tool, I just did B for brush, click, click, E for Eraser, and click, click. And I think that looks pretty good. We could call this a finished project. I hope that this tutorial has been useful. Please check out my other videos to continue learning about Photoshop.